Maharaj begins, let us do one thing. Let us turn off all our cell phones in a airplane mode. Before Maharaj begins, let me tell you the logistics. Once Maharaj's talk is done, there will be maybe short kirtan. After that, the prasadam will be served outside. Two prasadam serving. So when you go out, you have to carry the plate. And if you want to have a plate and eat somewhere here, then you have to go in one of the rooms close by. So we have so many ushers. The guys outside, they will help you to go in the neighboring rooms and you can go and eat there. And if you want to use the restrooms, we have a couple of restrooms here and the other restrooms on the left side. There are many. You have to just walk maybe a couple of 100 meters from here, and then you will find a lot of restrooms there. If you need help, please find some of the devotees who are standing outside. They will be more than happy to help you. And if any of your friends who are coming here and they are not able to find any parking, please call up the devotees or ask any of the devotees, volunteer devotees outside. They will be more than happy to help you. Thank you, dear devotees. Without much ado, let me pass it over to His Holiness Radhanatha Swami Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Nama Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Asatyate Satharine. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Hari Ko, Hari Ko, Hari Ko, Hari Ko. humbled and honored to directly observe the technology of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. That's probably the extent of what I could understand. But it's one of the few times that I've encountered technology that actually works really nice and practical. I'm very grateful to all of you for coming this evening. It's very special at this historic, world-renowned, exalted institute, MIT, to gather with all of you. There was only 1 day notice of coming. Actually, today. It was just advertised this morning that this event would happen here. In 1965, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Prabhupada, made his first entrance into the United States of America at the Boston Harbor. What Srila Prabhupada brought with him was a profound, developed, since the most ancient times, a philosophy, a science, a technology that harmonizes the body, the mind, and the soul.
Which voice system? Is it possible to speak closer to the mic?
It's my second encounter with technology this evening. Technology is easier to deal with than technologists. Sometimes. Because the human element is sometimes quite complex. Srila Prabhupada came on behalf of Krishna, or God, and great acharyas, enlightened teachers, over many, many centuries. This philosophy, science, and technology of how to interact the soul with the mind, with the physical world, and with each other in such a way that there could be true benefit, purpose, meaning, and progress. Real human progress is not based on the various devices that can apparently make life easier or more efficient. Real human progress is based on the uplifting of our values, our character, our very purpose of living. And various devices, various sciences, when they are supported by this type of compassionate spirit of heart, when they are used for the purpose of enlightenment, they have very, very great value. A hammer can build a house. A hammer can tear down a house. Just depends on whose hand it's in and what their purpose is. So is a hammer destructive or constructive? It's neutral. It's the person that makes it destructive or constructive. And that is the same with everything. Knowledge, the power to speak, wealth, fame, skills, resources. They can use to cause pain, or the same could be used to liberate a person from pain. In one sense, bhakti, Krishna consciousness, or what the Bhagavad Gita calls Raja Vidya, the king of knowledge, is very simple. At the same time, when it's explained from a comprehensive perspective, it is the most complex. It is so deep. Jiva Goswami could speak of the simplest things with such profound philosophy that you really need to be a scholar to understand what he's saying. And then he can take that same conclusion and bring it down to such a simple explanation that a child without an education can understand. What is simpler than to love and be loved? And yet, what are the implications and complications that the quest to love and be loved creates within human history and within our own minds and hearts? A little baby, really all the baby understands is the love of the mother. The baby is completely, totally dependent on the mother's love. And a loving mother, she doesn't need any explanations or understandings. She doesn't have to watch any PowerPoint presentations to feel love for her child. It's the simplest, most natural thing in all of creation. At our Govardhanika village, just recently, in the month of February actually, one of our cows, her name is Anandi, she gave birth to twin bulls. Did you ever see a cow give twins? It's extremely rare. It hardly ever happens. And twins are very difficult. And rarely can a cow survive, a mother cow, after giving twins. Because of those of you who know cows, they come out quite big. And within minutes after being born, they're jumping around and walking around. and pushing their mother around. And bulls, male cows, they're bigger and rougher as soon as they're born. So nobody knew she had twins in her. But when one came out and then the other, I cannot explain the medical problem that she was facing, but it was life or death crisis. It just tore to pieces so many of the elements within her to get those two bulls out. It crippled her. It tore so many limbs or organs and tendons and all of those things. The veterinarian came and said she will die. She can't live. She's in so much pain. She can't stand up. It's almost impossible she'll ever be able to stand up again. And practically whenever this happens, the cows are in so much pain and so much desperation, they just stop eating and they die. And she had all those symptoms. She was just laying on her side. She couldn't even sit up. But yet, her caretakers would bring her two little baby children in front of her, and they would dance around. Their mother's dying, and they would just dance around her. And she would look at them. She couldn't give them milk. She had no capacity to give milk. She had no capacity to do anything. She was laying with her face on the ground sideways. But seeing her little calf, she wanted to live. That was her reason to live, her motherly love, nothing else. And so many devotees were taking care of her. This is probably not the common lecture at MIT. But I'll try to make a connection. It took about 4 or 5 people at a time just to move her, because cows are huge. And just to lift her, to put like sacks under her so that she could be upright a little, so her head wasn't being like her neck wasn't being broken because she couldn't sit up. And it was constant care like that. And she could feel that day and night devotees were chanting for her and trying to make her more comfortable and bringing her calves to just come and lay in front of her, dance in front of her, jump around. And that gave her a purpose to live. And she could not stand up for several months. She was in pain, everything around her, inside, very difficult to ever heal. And every time the veterinarian came, he said, it's just a matter of time. She's almost surely to die. But feeling that so many people wanted her to live, and wanting to be a mother for these little children, gave her the incentive. After about 2.5 months, she stood up. And now she's walking around. And there wasn't really any medicines that anybody has ever invented to give her to help her with that situation. But now she's quite fine because of this simple motivation of a mother's love for a little child. She doesn't have the brain of a human. But she has the heart of a mother. And it's the same heart as a human mother. So to love and be loved is the simplest thing in all of existence. When we read about the beautiful loving rasas or pastimes between Krishna and the residents of Vrindavan, they're living in a very simple village. And they know that Krishna simply loves them and they love Krishna. And in that love, they all love each other. But due to the false ego, the ahankar, was such a complex element that no science or artificial intelligence or technology can ever understand the depths of how the ego works with all of its details. What to speak of the mind? Due to the ego and the mind, when it's disconnected from the nature of the love of the soul, life becomes so complicated. A loving soul that's such an ananda, full of bliss, can suffer so miserably in so many ways. Could go into depression. A soul that's completely dependent at every moment on the gifts of the Supreme Lord could feel so arrogant that I'm the controller, I'm the proprietor. A person who even knows it's just a matter of time they're going to die are still putting so much of their time trying to somehow punascharvata charvananam, get a little more pleasure through the mind and body and senses, knowing everything's going to be taken away. I don't want to go to details because I don't want to embarrass someone, but I spoke with a wonderful person, and her husband just died within an earthquake. She has 2 little children. Within a matter of a minute, their whole lives will never be the same. They're only in their 30s. A widow, fatherless children. First words when I spoke, I'm totally devastated. I know philosophically things could padam yad vipadam natesham. But how the one you love the most, the person you're depending on the most, the person your children are, in just a moment gone. But that is the reality that is facing everyone, always. We do not know what will happen at the next moment. And it's actually a very simple thing to understand. I'm not this body, I am the eternal soul. And the only thing I really want in my life is to love and be loved. And the origin and the fulfillment of that love is to love God, to love Krishna, to feel Krishna's love, which is infinite and forever, and to perceive the presence of God in everything and everyone. Because that is the simplest reality and truth there is. If there's a creation, there's a creator. That's pretty simple, isn't it? And within the creation, the presence of the creator, the energy of the creator is ever existing. The sunshine is the energy of the sun. It's the creation of the sun. Can any of us say that the sun is not in the sunshine? It's very simple. But due to the complexities of the false ego, when we become disconnected from that, in the quest of that love, through a distracted, forgetful, and often perverted state of consciousness, we create wars. We destroy. We cause so much suffering. So yes, to explain the Vedic literatures, how this material existence is operating, and why it's operating the way it does, and who's operating it. It's incredible philosophy. The simplest concepts sometimes have hundreds of different Sanskrit terminologies to describe the different aspects of it. But yet so simple. Its background and its purpose is to reconnect us to the simplest concept, to love and be loved. Sometimes when Srila Prabhupada came to Boston, he came by a cargo ship, which is a pretty simple form of technology. I'm not exactly sure how they worked in 1965, but probably they would just have a big section that they just filled with coal. And they'd shovel the coal into a fire, and the fire made some sort of like a little engine work and move the ship forward. And I've been to that King George dockyards in Calcutta, where the ship departed from India. And I was there some years ago. It was really simple. There wasn't much technology. They would just pick up crates with their arms, or sometimes with some ropes and pulleys, and somehow or other get those crates on the ship. He had never been on an airplane in his life. He was about 71 years old when he boarded his first airplane from New York City to San Francisco. And in his lectures, Srila Prabhupada would talk about what an amazing experience. But he would explain it amazing how Maya works. Because he was seeing all these houses and people so tiny, small size. And he explained how sannyasis, swamis, sadhus, they usually do not utilize these types of technologies, but for a higher purpose. He took airplanes and circled the globe 12 times in the next 11 years. Rupa Goswami was writing his books in Vrindavan by carving letters on palm leaves. Srila Prabhupada was in the same place at the Radha Damodar temple, and he was typing with a manual typewriter. And later on, after he came to America, somebody gave him an electric typewriter. This was considered really high-tech, an electric typewriter. Then, a little while later, someone brought him a reel-to-reel tape recorder where he could just dictate things. And then after some time, they brought him a dictaphone where he would just press a button and he could just speak translations and everything. And Srila Prabhupada marveled at how, if we have the right motivation and the right purpose, if we have a pure spirit of service, then that purity can be expressed in glorious ways through very, very, very complex technologies. But when we become very complicated, then we use technology to further complicate our own lives, the people that experience us, and the world. But if we're tuned into this very simple principle of kindness, compassion, love, the love of the soul, then we could spread, express, and amplify these simple divine principles through this complex technology. Making money, is it good or bad? If we're using our money and making the money for a good purpose, it's good. If we're making it and earning it with a divine purpose, then it's divine. And if we're doing it for an evil purpose, it becomes evil. and the effect is evil. When Srila Prabhupada, he came to MIT and he spoke in a very famous lecture. And he was asking, do you have a course? Do you have a department that teaches the science and technology of tuning into your own soul to understand who you are? We could learn so many things of what we could do, but do we understand who we are, who is the doer, and what are the actual needs and wants of the doer, of the self? Education, it involves accumulating knowledge, experiences that others have presented. But it also is teaching us how to draw the knowledge from within our own hearts and our own souls, to awaken the knowledge of the soul. So yes, we can pull the screen up, which was kind of where, because I didn't know what to speak about. And the screen went up, so I started talking on that subject. And that's why we ended up where we are now. But that screen could be, there could be some people up there pulling it. There could be a rope with pulleys that screw it up. Or there can be some electrical motor that pulls it up, which I think this is. Or there could be like very, very sophisticated, expensive computer microchips that are, setting all sorts of different actions and reactions and pulling it up. But the result, it went up. So similarly, we could lift people up either by very simple ways, or by using the most complex ways, or we could drag people down in the same way. And when Srila Prabhupada came to Boston, he didn't come to defeat religions. He came to remind us of what is at the true heart of all religions. With the dimension of Vrindavan, an unmotivated, uninterrupted, ecstatic love of God as the all-great creator, or as a servant, as a friend, as a child, or a lover. And when we have that foundation, he didn't come to do away with science. He didn't come to do away with technology. He came actually to appreciate not the thing in itself, but the values and purpose in which it is being engaged. Pandita Samadarshana. Elevation of human cultures. The culture of compassion. I asked my beloved God brother, the exalted Pyari Mohan Prabhu, what should I speak of? What did you say? I don't even remember.
I didn't give you a topic.
He didn't say anything.
No, I said how amazed I was when he was driving to the 50th, what was it, Faneuil Hall, and we all gave talks, and you were giving a talk, and you asked me something about Boston. What is Boston famous for? And I don't even remember what I said, but I said something. And then you gave a talk about that and relating it completely to Krishna consciousness. And I was like totally amazed how in just a few moments you came with one topic. And so I did say you could think of anything. And you mentioned Lord Chaitanya. And I said, yeah.
So may I speak something of Lord Chaitanya? And try to connect it to all these other things. There was a very, very simple-hearted, but such a incredible organizer. He had a wife, several children. His name was Shivananda Sen. Shivananda Sen, he had an occupation. He had so many worldly duties. He saw that Lord Chaitanya, who was living in Jagannath Puri, invited all his devotees to come to Puri every year and spend 4 months with him. Now in those days there was no trains. This is 500 years ago. There was no planes. There was no buses. The only way to get from one place to another is you walk. And when there's a river, there was no motorboats. When there was a river, you had to somehow or other find a rowboat to get you across it, or a raft. The journey takes about 3 weeks to walk. Shivananda saying, he wanted so much that everyone could go, even people who didn't have any money, any resources. So he personally arranged. He worked all year. He worked all year, and he would save so that he could fund everyone going. And it wasn't just a matter of funding. If you're walking for 3 weeks, every night everyone needs a place to go to sleep. There were no hotels or motels. He had to have built places for like about 400 devotees, 400 pilgrims. And everyone has to eat. It wasn't roadside diners. He had to send people ahead to make kitchens and cook for 400 people. Every day. But the most difficult things, India was not one country at that time. It was many little kingdoms and provinces. And each one had its own local rulers. and a word that's quite well used in America today, each province had immigration. And sometimes part of the immigration was tax. Where you had to pay a tax for everybody. No, nobody had money for tax. Shivananda Sain had to do it for everyone. Was it filled with anxieties? Definitely. Whenever we want to serve for a higher cause, anxieties come with it. Because the nature of this world is there's opposition to good things. And it's described that sometimes he would just send everybody through the toll gates, the immigration gates, and he would be, spending hours and hours and hours trying to, convince them to reduce the taxes because he had to do it everywhere, and he had to survive. And meanwhile, every day there was wonderful prasad, shelter for them to sleep. Everyone else was just singing and dancing the whole way. And he was doing all this stuff with some of his assistants. One day, they came to a wide river, and a deep river. So everyone was getting on the boat. Shivananda Sain's paying for everyone. At that time, a dog, not like a pedigree pet, just a stray dog. A stray dog just started following with the party. And Shivananda Sain considered he wasn't seeing the physical designations. Anyone who wants to come and see Lord Chaitanya is going to get purified and blessed. And my goal of life is to help him get there and be comfortable doing it. And actually, in Bengal, I imagine Gauranga Prabhu's here. He has these realizations, cooking. People in that part of India usually like spicy food. He had the cooks make a special diet just for the dog. Not to try to prove something, but because that was his heart. He wanted if these are people going to Lord Chaitanya, they should be happy, they should be healthy. So he was making a special custom, what do they call it, a la carte or something? Just for the dog. And the dog was really happy. He's eating the best foods. He's surrounded by kirtans, and everybody loves everybody, and they love him too. So he was happy. And then they came to this boat at the river, and the boatman was putting everybody else on. Shivananda's son's paying for everyone. And when the dog came, he said, "No dogs allowed on my boats." And that's a very nice excuse to just leave the dog behind. Shivananda Sain was so determined. This is not just a dog, this is a pilgrim. This is a child of God. And he was willing to pay like many times more than any of the human passengers for him to let the dog on. And when you offer a boatman that much more money, then his rules are not so important anymore. So they let the dog on. And the dog's on the boat. And they go across the river. And many, many days are passing. And they come to one toll gate where they were really, some of these places, the kings were plunderers and rogues, and they had people, really trying to cheat people. So he was there hour after hour trying to, somehow or other get the devotees through. And meanwhile, while he was doing that, he had let everybody through, and he stayed back to do all this. So lunch came, and everyone was fed. And Shivananda Sain, when he joined the pilgrims again, he didn't see the dog. He asked, "Where is the dog?" Everybody said, "We don't know." He asked the cook, "Did you feed him the special prasad?" And the cook said, "Because you were not here and there was so much commotion and so much rush and so much everything, I forgot." And Shivananda Sain was so upset. With his assistants, they spent hours looking for the dog. But they couldn't find him anywhere. So he felt that he failed. Now he's a completely transcendental, liberated soul. He's on the highest level of ecstatic love of God, prema bhakti. Shivananda Sain was so dear to the Lord. Way beyond liberation or mukti, he was situated in prema. But yet, in his prema, he was accepting these anxieties for a higher purpose. Anxiety in the service of God is a much deeper experience spiritually than shanti or peace. Days went by, and finally they arrived in Jagannath Puri. When they arrived in Puri, they went to the Gambhira, where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu resided. And Lord Chaitanya met all of them. And Lord Chaitanya then arranged accommodations just suitable to the needs and wants of each of the pilgrims and devotees. And arranged wonderful prasad, food, and had wonderful kirtans, and wonderful kathas, and wonderful darshans. And one morning, Shivananda Sain came alone to meet Lord Chaitanya in the little courtyard outside Lord Chaitanya's residence. And he was struck with wonder. He saw Lord Chaitanya take some prasad, some food, and Lord Chaitanya would take a bite out of it. And he said, chant Krishna, Krishna. And then he'd throw the prasad. And Shivananda Sain saw in the courtyard was the same dog. All alone with Lord Chaitanya. No one else was there. And Lord Chaitanya would take a bite and say Krishna, Krishna.
Krishna, Krishna.
And the dog went, Krishna, Krishna. Something like that. Probably much more sweet and melodious than me. And then Lord Chaitanya would take the prasad out of his mouth and toss it in the air, and the dog would, because they don't catch with their hands, they catch with their mouth. And he caught it and ate it. And then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took another bite out of another piece of prasad and said, chant Krishna, Krishna. Krishna, Krishna. Yeah, you're supposed to sound like dogs when I do it. We're Krishna, Krishna. And Mahaprabhu threw it and the dog caught it. And it was such a blissful, happy, intimate exchange of love between Lord Chaitanya and a dog, giving mercy, because prasad means mercy. Lord Chaitanya was personally, from his own hands, offering his mercy to the dog. When Shivananda Sain saw that, he began to cry. And he bowed down to the lotus paws of the dog. And he begged forgiveness in his heart for not properly serving. Now, the most important part of the story is that dog was never seen again. Because on that day, Lord Chaitanya gave that dog the highest perfection of liberation and sent his eternal soul to the spiritual world, Vaikuntha. What was that dog's qualification? Now, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, who was the author of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, he dedicates a whole section of a chapter of his book to this story. And Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is one of the most profound philosophical books ever written. It's describing in great details Ishwara Tattva, Jiva Tattva, Shakti Tattva, Rasa Tattva, all these different truths in such deep, scientific, philosophical, and complete ways. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he said when he's praying for the day when people from all countries will want to learn Sanskrit and Bengali just so that they could read Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So while he's explaining such extensive poetic ways, with such deep spiritual science, quoting from the highest of the Vedas, why include this story? Because it really is at the heart of it all. And he himself gives this explanation. This story is being presented to show how the Lord gives his most special mercy to anyone who is an object of the love and the kindness and the compassion of his devotees. What was the dog's qualification? to achieve Vaikuntha, the spiritual world, in a matter of days. He wasn't doing all that much sadhana. He wasn't a famous orator. He didn't know how to read or write. His qualification was that Shivananda Sain cared about him. Shivananda Sain showed mercy to him. And when somebody who loves the Lord loves someone, then the Lord gives special mercy to that person who is the object of the affection and the mercy of his devotee. So what is the greatest way we could actually serve, show compassion? Whether it's our parents, our brothers and sisters, our family, our dogs, our cats, our people of our nation, people of our community, people of the world, all living beings. What's the greatest thing we could do for them? Whether we're students or professors of technology, or whether we're farmers, or mothers, or fathers, or swamis. If we surrender to serving and pleasing Krishna, samsadhir haditoshana, when Krishna's pleased with us, then whatever we do, the Shakti of the Lord's compassion will manifest through that. The dog was the object of the mercy of a devotee. And therefore, Lord Chaitanya himself gave the highest benediction to that dog. What was his qualification? His qualification was he just received the mercy of one who loved God. Once a devotee asked Srila Prabhupada, what is our qualification? We were living so immorally and so lost, and now you've given us a lifestyle of such character, and you're giving us such a deep philosophy and such a deep... Prabhupada would call Krishna consciousness a science, a spiritual science. Such joy and the eligibility to attain such a pure perfection in this life. We didn't even know such a perfection existed of this level. And you're opening the doors for us and leading us through those doors. What is our qualification? Srila Prabhupada, with great humility and honesty, he said, actually, you had no qualifications. He said, I am making your qualifications, and you're simply receiving it. And yet, here in Boston Harbor, when Srila Prabhupada was writing his beautiful prayers to Krishna, he gives a purport of what he means by, I'm giving you these qualifications. He describes himself as an insignificant beggar. What can I do to help these people? I have no capacity. Krishna, only if you give me your words to speak to them, and you help them understand, only then will they really be happy. He's praying to Krishna, please give me your words to speak and give them the power to understand them so they could be happy. And the idea of parampara is something so beautiful. As we become purified, as we please our gurus, Srila Prabhupada and God, Krishna, then when somebody is an object of our concern and care, it's not about us, it's about Krishna reciprocating with the devotee's efforts by giving special mercy, special love, special kindness to those who we love. The greatest way for a mother, the greatest gift a mother can give to a child or a father can give to their child is if they love Krishna. Then their love, Krishna, manifests through their love for the child. And that's something much deeper than just our own sentiments. And our friends, and our God brothers and God sisters, and actually all living beings. Lord Chaitanya would say about Shivananda saying, your family is my family. Because he loved his family, Lord Chaitanya considered, and his family, his children became among the greatest poets, acharyas, and great spiritual leaders of all time. Why? They became like that when they were little children, actually. Because they were the objects of affection of somebody who purely loved the Lord. So whatever our profession, Srila Prabhupada was very, very enthusiastic. A devotee like Sadaputta, Srila Prabhupada, Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj. Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj, he met Srila Prabhupada, I believe in California. He was working on a PhD in physical science at an American university. He was unmarried. He wanted to be a brahmachari. Prabhupada encouraged him, get your PhD, become a scientist, become the best possible scientist. And with that scientific information and knowledge, present Krishna consciousness through science. The social internet today could be such a massive universal distraction. But it can also be the most beautiful medium to enlighten people in pure devotional service. Sariputta, Srila Prabhupada encouraged him so dearly to become the best possible scientist. And he was. Yeah, one time, by Krishna's grace, I did a whole lecture series with him at universities and colleges in Canada. It was really interesting. Did any of you ever hear the story? Would you like to hear the story? What are you supposed to say? You are all such polite, kind people. We flew into Toronto. First I came in. And the idea was he was going to speak. There was about 7 or 8 universities. And there were auditoriums much bigger than this, each one. And it was all graduate students, PhD students, professors, and deans of students who were gathered. It was public, wasn't devotee temple pro. Today's program is the temple program shifted here. It's a different atmosphere. These people were scholars in science. So we made a decision that, or the organizer, he would speak from the scientific perspective, and then I would speak the same things he spoke from the Vedic perspective. And we were supposed to meet for half a day before our first lecture so that we could synchronize what we were going to speak. But his flight was late. It was really late. So I went to the program. The temple president took me, and it's full. You know, he just came out with a book called Mechanistic and Non-Mechanistic Science, and it really challenged science. Didn't reject it, just challenged their conclusions. He didn't challenge the method, he challenged the conclusions. So they were there, many to fight. So he didn't come. And like 5 minutes before the event, he rushed in. He's wearing a very nice suit and tie, nicely combed hair. He looked like a refined, scholarly scientist. And I'm just like this. And he came up to me before, he got on stage. I was in the audience. I said, what are we doing? He said, just listen to what I'm saying. And then whatever I speak, you just give the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Vedic perspective of what I speak. That sounds simple, yes? Now, this comes back to the beginning of today's talk. We were talking about synchronizing simple and complex. He gave his lecture for an hour. I was supposed to give a lecture for an hour after him. Everyone was in total rapt attention by what he was saying. Sometimes some people were fascinated, some people were disturbed, but they were listening. I didn't know what he was talking about. I left college after one semester and lived in a cave in the Himalayas. I don't know these things. But he was so empowered and so energized and so enthusiastic speaking. And he had, in those days, they didn't have PowerPoints, they had overhead projectors. You remember, where it's like there's some little thing with a light on it, he had an overhead projector. He had these transparent slides that he was putting in there, and he was explaining, and I couldn't figure out what was on the projector. There was like all these formulas. And most of the letters weren't even like alphabet letters. And he was speaking such big words that in my whole life, I never heard of. Actually, at the end of the lecture, I had no idea what he said. And he concluded his lecture and said, now I would like to introduce Radhanath Swami, and exactly what I just spoke from the scientific perspective, he is going to give an explanation from the Vedic paradigm. When you're really in a helpless situation, because, it was on camera and everything. People. When you're helpless, which is a situation we're always often in, I just prayed to Prabhupada and prayed to Krishna and prayed to Jiva Goswami. Please empower me to speak. And sometimes that prayer really works. But that evening, it didn't work. Presumptuously, I pretended like I knew everything he said. And I started speaking Bhagavad Gita philosophy, and I was really enthusiastic and surcharged. And then at the end of my talk, Sariputta Prabhu came back on stage, and we were both supposed to answer questions. There's probably about 500 people in the audience of this university auditorium. This lady professor raises her hand. She said, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Please." Now, why she asked permission to ask the question meant, it kind of indicated what type of question it would be. She said, "Swamiji, you gave a very nice lecture on Bhagavad Gita, but we were told you were coming to speak the Vedic paradigm as an explanation to what Dr. Richard Thompson has just said." I said, "Yes." She said, "What you spoke had absolutely nothing to do with anything he said." And then everyone in the room was saying, "Yes, I have the same question. What does this have to do with anything he said? You didn't address one point that he said." So that was her question. Why? Why didn't you talk about what he said? And sometimes honesty really is the best policy. I said, he went to college and got a PhD. And when I was supposed to be in college, I was living in a cave in the Himalayan jungles. I said, "Honestly, I don't know what he said." And she said, "But you were sitting in the audience with all of us. You were listening." I said, "I know, but I didn't understand anything. I'm just sharing what I know." So that was kind of a disaster. But we both stayed in the brahmachari ashram together that night, because he was a brahmachari at that time. And we were in a bunk bed. And he was in the lower bunk, and I was in the higher bunk, because we got back really late. Because he was all the other questions were for him. And it went on for a really long time. And when we finally came back, he's very humble but very scholarly, very grave. He said, Maharaj, actually I was a brahmachari at the time. No, I was a sannyasi, I was. He said, Maharaj, he said, why didn't you speak on the subjects I spoke about? I said, because I really don't understand your vocabulary. I said, just explain your concepts to a simple person like me, and then tomorrow at least I'll be able to represent what you're saying. So for the next couple hours, he was just explaining. It was kind of like a physics professor trying to explain physics to a first grader. And he did. And he did it really well. And then we had about 10 other, programs after that. And every one of them, after I gave my presentation to describe the Vedic paradigm of his lecture, everyone applauded. Sometimes I got standing ovations. You're not even standing, but don't worry. I was much more empowered when Dr. Thompson was with me. But actually, that was the comment. You're saying exactly the same things from different perspectives. One is very simple. One is very complex. But actually, Sariputta Prabhu was one of the most simple-hearted devotees and most simple-hearted people you'll ever meet. Do you remember? He was just so humble and gentle. And caring and kind. But he was a genius. He was a genius in his field. I saw scientists challenge him in these atheistic scientists. He was not speaking in any way, shape, or form against science or technology or engineering or the whole educational system. He was giving alternatives to their conclusions. He was proving that their conclusions were not actually based on true science. He was challenged that your science isn't really science because your conclusions cannot be proven. So if you cannot prove your conclusions, you should be open to other explanations. And he didn't give the other explanations. He asked me to do that. But he challenged the very fabric, not of science, but the arrogance that could come with it. And I saw one man, he was a very great, quite well-known professor, multi-PhDs. He was screaming at Sariputta. I was sitting next to him. I could see this man, he was so angry. He was insulted. such a challenge. And Sariputta Prabhu, Dr. Richard Thompson, he gave an answer. He spoke so eloquently, sweet, humble, assertive, but with such authority on the very subject that that man challenged him. And I was watching the man because and first I saw he was burning with anger. And then I saw his anger just kind of wilted away, and he was just like amazed. And then he was standing up, and then he just sat down and was listening like a humble student. And at the end, that professor said, "I must confess, this is the field that I am an authority on, and you know far more about it than me." But what was the aim of all this great knowledge and technology and science and learning and ability to present it? To help a person, even in a field where they utilize all these things and expand all these things, to understand God, to live in harmony with God, to live in harmony with the true nature of the universe. And to directly have experience of the conscious force, the soul, as the true self that is learning and knowing and speaking and acting. Shivananda saying he knew how to earn money with integrity, and he knew how to spend his money with compassion, because he understood everything belonged to God, his organizational abilities, all of his team of assistants, all of his resources. Let me use them to uplift these people in the service of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And whether it's a great pundit, Brahmin, or whether it's a dog, let me be an instrument of Lord Chaitanya's compassion. Thank you very much. Now that you're standing, would you like to dance? Okay. Do we have time?
Yes, we have 20 minutes.
We have 20 minutes around. Okay.
Yes, we do have time.
We do have.
I'll just announce them so that they don't go. Okay, so please do not go. The food will be served outside in a plate. So it's a to-go box, so you can take the to-go box You don't have to worry about the prasadam. Just be seated here. Maharaj will do the kirtan. Please be seated.
No, not seated. Dance.
Okay, you want to dance it. So then please come. The floor is open. There's a floor at the back also. You can use that. And the floor in the middle. Just be careful in the middle. We don't want any fall or anyone going to ER. Please be mindful. Okay. Use this floor. Please come forward. Use the floor.
Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirbhishesha Shunyavadi Vastati Deshatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Very loud with great feeling. Together, please. Raise your arms very high. From the heart, sing very loud, please, to fill the world with the holy names of the Lord. Together. Hare Krishna, one more time, please. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, many millions of times louder, please. Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Thank you very much.
His Holiness Radhanatha Swami Maharaj ki.
Are these the formulas you saw? Are these the formulas you saw? Are these the formulas you saw in the presentation by Sadhu Prabhu?
Same formula.
I think they're from the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. We would like to thank all of you for joining us here today. On behalf of ISKCON Boston, I thank deeply from the core of our heart for gracing this wonderful occasion in the auspicious presence of His Holiness Radhanatha Swami Maharaj. Let's express our deepest gratitude, our appreciation, and our love for His Holiness Radhanatha Swami Maharaj by giving him a big round of applause. That was not sounding. Please, one more. Big Thank you, dear devotees, for joining us here today. All the philosophy, the Bhakti philosophy and the Chaitanya philosophy which Radhanatha Swami was speaking, the books are placed here in the front and at the back, which are written by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So you can see.